Honourable Crispin Lyson.
Mr Speaker, I agree that the past week has been a very interesting week in New Zealand politics, a difficult time for a member of the House. It proves the old adage that nothing in this game lasts forever. What's here today can be gone tomorrow. It was an emotional week, and of course I refer to the impending retirement of Rajan Prasad. Mr Speaker, attention from the very good work that the government is doing for this country was diverted by the stunning news that Rajan's on his bike. But I'm here to remind the House, Mr Speaker, that life will go on without Dr Prasad. He may no longer be with us after the election, but we will still have the lowest crime rate in 25 years. The OECD, as we know from today, says that we're in very good shape. Some say that we'll have the highest economic growth in the developed world this year. We still have the extra $22 million boost for budgeting services announced by my good friend Paula Bennett this week. And as Mr Joyce said, an extra 84,000 more jobs created in the last year. And so we must continue. As Dr Prasad noted, he has made his contribution to Parliament. His work is done. When earlier this year he asked 3 questions in question time, he equalled the total number of questions he'd asked in the previous 5 years. Little, sadly, did we know that this flurry of activity was really a death rattle. But, Mr Speaker, I want to tell the House a most interesting story. Last Sunday I woke up at 6:55 and, as is my wont, lunged for my radio so that I could listen to the news on Radio New Zealand. And after the news, I thought the children's programs must have continued because there was a bizarre interview with a fellow called David Cunliffe. And Wallace Chapman, who's replaced Labour-lovey Chris Laidlaw on the program, was asking him a question. Who in your caucus, Mr Cunliffe, has experience as a manual worker? And he said, there are many. And as I look across, I can't see many, but he said, who exactly? Oh, Darian. I recognise Darian Fenton. But then he said, well, who in particular? And he said, me. Apparently, Mr Cunliffe was a manual worker. Between secondary school and going to university, apparently he was a shearer. And so I'd very much like him, to challenge Colin King to a shearing competition. So the Bard of Harvard is really a son of the soil, but as a man who works with his hands, Mr Cunliffe will appreciate this week's announcement of $20 million in the budget for 6,000 more apprenticeships, which this is going to give eligible apprentices or trainees an opportunity to apply for a $1,000 subsidy toward the costs of tools and off-job course costs, or $2,000 for those in priority trades. So what we have with Mr Cunliffe is a very, very strange person, and Wallace Chapman's not the only person to have identified this. Always secretive, always darting around the edges of the truth. We have the secret trusts. We have those extraordinary statements about the Wales case, a triumph for this country, and he denied we were there. As Sunday's radio interview shows, Mr Speaker, he's so adept at being tricky that when he has no one to deceive, he deceives himself just to keep in practice. A very, very odd fish indeed. And when he talks about the stark contrasts in the next few months, I'll place the House on this fellow Key going head-to-head with Cunliffe and crushing him.
Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker, I have some respect for